Is there a place for redemption in the workplace? Is there a place for redemption in your career success? Does it even help it or does it hurt it? Well, we're going to address today the fact that pointing your effort between 8 and 5 or 8 and 7 at helping people redeem their situation is almost everything, even in business. And to do that, I have a very special guest that's faced many things that most of us will never hopefully face and found redemption.
Anything that you feel like is dominating your thoughts in a negative way, the challenge would be to let that go. Let it go. Just reframe your outlook and retrain your habits and your systems and everything about that to never go back to it and to move yourself forward so that you just leave it behind. In that moment, at least it appears to me that those individuals are focused on those things that they can control to bring the greatest benefit for their customers or the people that they're serving. And I think that's where the success really comes, is that they're absolutely wholly focused and all in on this concept of, I'm going to apply myself wholeheartedly into helping my customer, helping my business plan, helping my team, whatever it is to kind of achieve the maximum result. Choosing to kind of heal in the way I chose to heal was really kind of, when you talk about redemption, it's I think a really important point because a lot of people call this, this forgiveness. This was an act of amazing forgiveness that was offered to this 17-year-old boy. But I really want to, when I talk to people about that, I want to be really clear what forgiveness means to me.
Chris Williams, IBM's data and AI sales leader. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Good. I'd like to just right off the bat, before I have you tell your story, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you grew up in your very early childhood. And you can just take just 1 or 2 minutes. You don't have to go too long, but some of the interesting things about that.
Sure. Born and raised here in Salt Lake City, Utah. Just grew up skiing in the winter time and more recently mountain biking in the summer. And then as a kid, just hiking in the hills. I lived actually on the foothills of Salt Lake City. So being able to hike in the mountains and do overnights and just absolutely love being outdoors. And then going into the southeast of Utah and enjoying Moab and Zions, it was just an absolutely wonderful place to grow up. But after college, I got into computing actually as a computer programmer, just as it was starting to take off before the whole .com fervor, and was able to ride through a couple of startups and got into a company that was a database focused just on database technology. And then they were acquired by IBM, and I've stuck with IBM for 23 years. So it's been quite a ride through some exciting times in technology. And currently we're riding the wave of quantum computing and AI capabilities. So I've got a team of specialists that work throughout the Western United States that help customers integrate with those technologies. So it has been a fascinating career, just watching, from early Windows and going off mainframes and off green screens to what we have today. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, and it's easy to think, IBM, they've been through so many transitions, and what are they doing now for those of us that aren't customers for the last decade? But I think it's worthy to remind people that it's not like they just got into this interesting AI and data business. Big center in Schaumburg, isn't it? Isn't that where it's always been? Where were all the big AI efforts and data efforts for IBM over the years, and where are they now?
Yeah, currently they're in close to our headquarters, which is in Armonk, New York. But Yorktown Heights and the White Plains area is kind of the center bed of that. And then now a growing technology hub in Austin, Texas. So with quantum and AI, we've had our Watson capabilities around since the computers were taught to play chess and learned to compete in Jeopardy. So we've got tremendous patents and capabilities, and now we're bringing it to market.
Yeah, very early. I remember that as a young professional. You have got like 5 lives, really. I mean, you have quite a story. And so most guests, I lead them through a little bit of an arc, and we're going to get to some of the advice that I think only you can give with your professional background and your personal background. But first, I'd like you to just tell us the version of your story that you'd like in the time that we have right now.
Oh, sure. So in 2007, I was at a point in my career very successful and growing in all my as responsibilities, I also had a wife that's my best friend. We'd been married 18 and a half years. At that time, we had 4 children, from 14 down to 6, 3 boys and a girl. And then we were anxiously expecting our 5th child, a little boy that was to be born just, I guess in March of 2007. But February 9th, 2007, my family, we had just had dinner together, and we were driving under an underpass in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Hey, just a few seconds. As a premium member, you make a difference, not just a buck. Now you can give the gift of Bold Encounters Premium to someone else who you think could do the same. It takes just seconds at boldencounters.tv. Think of one person, a founder, a young adult, some person that you've helped mentor, raise, a leader, or even the chief executive. Give them the gift of weekly action plans with experts right by their side. Give them clarity and confidence to remove roadblocks and lead life's work just like you do. Go to boldencounters.tv and give the gift of premium to someone you care about. Thank you for making this all possible, and we'll see you soon.
When a pair of headlights crossed the center line and came into our lane, and we're in a 35 miles an hour zone, and this car's coming at us at freeway speeds. And so when it came across the line and into directly into our line of traffic and our line where we were driving, there was really nothing I could do as the driver of the vehicle to avoid being hit. So I went to basically turn left and not be hit, but there was, I think our car went about 10 feet from when I decided to turn to when we were hit, and we were T-boned on the passenger side by the car, and killed instantly. In that were my wife and the child that she was carrying, as well as my son Benjamin, my 12-year-old boy seated in the rear passenger seat, and then in the middle passenger seat was my daughter Anna. And so the 4 of them were killed instantly. My son Sam, who was seated directly behind me, and myself, you were injured significantly in the impact, but we weren't obviously killed. But that was just an absolutely traumatic, devastating experience that I wouldn't wish on anybody. And I was awake and aware after the impact in the car, and just devastated when I tried to find a pulse on my wife, for example, and I couldn't find one. And I could barely move myself, but I had an interesting experience seated there as I was mourning the passing of what I could at least see as at least my son and my daughter and my wife. I had an opportunity to look through the driver's window, or the driver's side door, up to the up the road that we had just traveled, and I saw the car that had just struck us on its roof, maybe 8 feet up the road. And I couldn't see anyone getting out of the car. I couldn't, see who was driving the car, or, I had no idea what had caused them to come across the lines, and impact us in that way. But I had a thought in that moment that this was going to impact them, whoever it was, as much as it was devastating me in that situation. And I had a decision to make, and that was would I let it go? In fact, that was the word. Those were the words that came to my mind as I sat there, just absolutely grieving the loss of my family, and then just wondering why in the world this car had crossed the line and come into our lane and hit us. And I realized that was the choice I needed to make then and there. And so I decided to do that. I decided to let it go, meaning regardless of what the circumstance was, or who was driving that car, or what caused them to veer, not only to be speeding, but to veer across the lanes of traffic and to come into our lane and strike us in that catastrophic manner, that I was going to let it go. I was going to choose to move forward and heal without anger or a desire for retribution, or kind of, I guess, any negative way of that is typically characterized as a negative way of moving forward from that type of a disaster. I think there had been a lot of experiences in my life prior to this that had helped me to get to that point where I could do it immediately. And, a lot of situations where I had contemplated, should anything bad come into my family, how would I work through it, and how would I handle it? So in that situation, this was really kind of, me staying true to a lot of commitments I had already made to myself, should I be presented with a tragic situation like this, a loss of a daughter, loss of a son, a loss of a spouse in a horrific manner, that I was going to let it go and pursue that type of healing. So this was my opportunity to make that and stay true to decisions that I had in effect had already made.
Let me ask you something, if I may. Could I ask them about that? It's interesting. I was sitting and watching a college football game at the University of Utah, right in front of you and Michelle. We had a conversation. A couple of those kids were there pretty recently, or right before the accident. And of course, your son has become one of my son's dear friends, even one of his best friends in high school, before they became adults and moved to different cities and such. And then I were fraternity brothers, and I was in awe of all the older people. You're a little older than I am. It's hard to believe anyone's older than me, but we're not 17 anymore. And I become fond of you because I drive that road almost every day, almost every single day I drive the road. And so it's become very personal even to me to think about you. And I run into you at a gas station or getting a diet drink or whatever, that I can't believe that happened to those wonderful people, but I can't believe that happened to my friend's family. And so it's been a very big story in my mind because of the multiple connections. And I, in doing this show, I would never have thought of having you on as a guest, but when I ran into you the other day, I happened to be thinking about one of the primary findings of my whole career, which is, if you set out to solve the problems, one of 4 types of outcome that should happen, but if you set out to solve a serious problem of the other person, your ideal client, your coworker, the person that's upstream from you towards the customer, the end user, finally, if you seek to solve their problems, then your career is going to go so much better. It's even going to be more lucrative than if you pursue money first as the first priority chronologically. And so I happened to be thinking about that. And so as I ran into you, the thought of redemption, of saving someone else a lot of problem and a lot of grief, was on my mind. And so I had read your book, and I knew what the attitude and the posture and the advantage you took towards this other person. The only maybe problem I have now is that I watched the movie after, so I have a few questions about what's true and what's not true about it. But in the movie, they depict you looking over, and he's crawling away at some point. Did you see him ever, as you looked over after the horrific accident, see him crawling away?
No. So it turned out it was a 17-year-old young man that had been drinking and driving that night. In fact, he had consumed almost a half a bottle of vodka. So he was very intoxicated and had been drinking for some time. So he had built up a bit of a tolerance to alcohol. So he was able to get out of the car and to walk away. And they found him about 3-4 blocks, down the road or away from the accident site, when he was, basically taken into custody. So I didn't personally see him get out, but I think what they were depicting in the movie is that he did basically get out and flee the scene, and he wasn't injured in any way in the crash.
Holy cow! Really, I didn't pick up on that even in the movie. Wow. Okay. So progress the story. Tell us what happens and what in the world happens next in this situation.
Yeah. So, choosing to kind of heal in the way I chose to heal was really kind of, when you talk about redemption, it's I think a really important point, because a lot of people call this, this forgiveness. This was an act of amazing forgiveness that was offered to this 17-year-old boy. But I really want to, when I talk to people about that, I want to be really clear what forgiveness means to me, because what forgiveness means is that I was choosing in that moment to focus on those things that I could control, and everything I couldn't control, I was going to let that go. And so that's where the let it go statement came from. And I think that's what the let it go meant when I heard that in my mind. And by let it go, meaning, any kind of legal ramifications that this young man faced, or any kind of legal ramifications that anyone was going to face, because once again, in the car, I didn't know who had hit us. But, if there was going to be, civil retribution or prison time or, court cases or, any type of legal or financial or anything else, that I was letting all of that go. I was going to just basically kind of let that take its course. And so my forgiveness wasn't in any way an absolution of wrongdoing. I wasn't saying, I don't want to hold you accountable for this. It wasn't, any of that. The forgiveness was basically a gift to myself to say, I am going to only focus on those things moving forward that I can focus on. I'm not strong enough to, take on the weight of the world as well as the weight of my own problems. And so I am only going to, in a sense, it was one of the most, I think, righteous and glorious yet selfish things I've ever done in my life, was to let it go so I could focus wholly and completely on me, on my path forward. And that's what I chose to do.
Yeah. Well, and the means was to not damage him more, to be vindictive. And so I'll let you get into that in a minute. It's a fascinating, surprising story about how that came to be. But it is true. Like, the self-interest is there. It's part of our reality. It does get to be second place on the podium of life success and even work success. But it has to come into the context, and the two have to play together, don't you think, of delivering things for yourself from helping other people?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's where you're onto something, in that, talking about, if you're focused on helping others, or those, to your research, right, that's focused on those that help people tend to succeed so much more in their career. I think it's really that focus, in that moment, at least it appears to me, that those individuals are focused on those things that they can control to bring the greatest benefit for their customers or the people that they're serving. And I think that's where the success really comes, is that they're absolutely wholly focused and all in on this concept of, I'm going to apply myself wholeheartedly into helping my customer, helping my business plan, helping my team, whatever it is, to kind of achieve the maximum result or the highest peak outcomes in that situation. And when you're focused that way, you don't get caught up in the petty. You don't get caught up in the minimal and in the superficial, in those things that can really distract and derail a career or an individual, in a negotiation, or in their ability to kind of address a customer or company's pains or issues. I think if they're too focused on themselves or their progression or how this will reflect on them, or if they've got some kind of other agenda that they're pursuing, then those are the people that tend, I think, over time, get exposed. One way or the other, they're found out for what they're really focused on. But those people that are genuinely into it to, as you call it, redeem, or to move a worthy goal forward, those are the ones that succeed. They find a way to make it happen.
Yeah. So what happened next to you in this part of your life? What was next that happened?
Well, it left me an absolutely devastated single father of two boys. My oldest son wasn't in the car with us that night. He was at a basketball game with friends, with your son and others, at a high school game. And then my 6-year-old son was heavily damaged. And so he had to spend about a month in a primary children's hospital, and then was released to continue recuperating at home. But it absolutely destroyed my life. It's, everything from, I was still able to maintain my job, but I ended up taking a different role within the company. It was just, very difficult to pursue the plan I was on, the professional plan I was on, without my spouse and half of my family. So, it was exceptionally disruptive. And then also it was the question of, could I stay true to this commitment I had made to let it go? So it was daily working on that, making sure that I didn't go back on that commitment, that I didn't give in to bitterness or revenge or hate or retribution or any of the angry and negative feelings that can overwhelm us. Even though I was absolutely angry and sad and distraught and lost and alone. All of those, horrific and terrifying emotions and situations were being experienced. So very, very, very difficult time.
Yeah, one of the impressions I had watching the movie recently again was And by the way, the movie's called Just Let It Go, and the book is Let It Go, right?
Yep.
Yeah. One of the impressions that I had that I owe to you is that, we've heard love thine enemy, and it's the highest bar for social behavior there is. But it's interesting when you apply it to the workplace and take what you've experienced. It's so close in a goals situation. Obviously, yours is far more severe, but it's interesting. Generally, you think of an enemy as all the time, lifelong. Generally, in every activity, an enemy is against you, which is the big category. But sometimes our supporting cast at work, or our team, or wherever you find yourself in your experiences in life, sometimes just the agendas cross, and even someone that you've socialized with or hung out with can lay you off or fire you even, or do something terrible to you in a moment where for them it's the right thing to do, it's the important thing to do. They may even see it as the selfless thing to do. But so here you are in this moment, and you're saying daily you have to remind yourself, no, generally this guy's not my enemy, but he certainly is right now and was that night, and I have to let it go, and I have to keep pushing off the instinct to not let it go and to bring it into me, that poison. And it just kept persisting and hitting you for a long time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, being brutally honest with yourself about those things that you have in your control is probably one of the most important aspects of this process I went through. And if you want to call it forgiveness, certainly it is, I guess. But as I look and reflect back on it, it really was just a very much a daily exercise in, just being very brutally frank with, the things that are in my control. And I say brutally frank because as I would analyze what is it that I could really control, there really wasn't much. I think when you have an enemy, you kind of tend to think, oh, I can do this and that will hurt them. Or I could, I have this in my control and I can outflank them, or I can get around them, or I can maybe discredit them, or I can maybe, get ahead of them. Or, if you're really trying to and focused on a way to compete with that enemy, it can kind of start to take those type of tactical thoughts, inhibiting your brain. And what I realized is that that's all kind of fantasy. It's all kind of, yeah, I could do those things, but it takes a tremendous amount of energy to do things. And I'm not guaranteed of any outcome when I do those things. There could be something else afoot that undermines everything I'm planning. And so when I would kind of peel all of those layers back and say, what is it that I absolutely can control 100% right now today? It was really just, what can I be grateful for? What can I do to improve my mood and to, my thought process? And then what is it that I can do to kind of reshape or change the narrative of my reality? It was really that basic. And I found myself just, making sure that I was wholly and completely focused every day on those things that were 100% in my control, and everything else, I just had to let those go and trust that, if I'm doing good, things will work out.
Mm-hmm. Those must have been some days. Tell us about what happens as you get closer to the court case and the legal scenarios, and then your thoughts become far more immediate with him, the gentleman, the young man.
So, fortunately, it was about three or 4 months before, any of the court proceedings happened. And what the court proceedings were about is because he was 17 when the crash happened, just a few months shy of his 18th birthday, they needed to first certify if he was going to stand trial as an adult or as a juvenile. And the difference there is if he stands trial as a juvenile, he would be held till he's 21 and then released with his record expunged. If he's tried as an adult, then he was facing 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, which, maximum is 25 years in prison. And so the judge that was certifying him was very much a proponent of the juvenile detention route, because that would give him a chance at his redeeming him and helping him and getting him the help he needed for his alcohol abuse, and getting him the help he needed to kind of, over the anger issues and some of the other things that this young man was dealing with, so that he could, move forward and be a productive man in society. So So having let it go and having 3 or 4 months of practicing this, what is it can I absolutely control? I came into the proceedings really just without any agenda, without any kind of expectation whatsoever. And so I let the judge know that I fully supported anything he decided to do, that, that was his job. He gets paid the money to make those decisions. And I just let him know that I would not, challenge him on anything. And it's interesting that this whole desire to try and focus on only those things I can control actually bled into the whether or not I was going to pursue any financial or legal course against the young man. So I didn't sue. I didn't take him to court for damages. I didn't do anything. I just let the measly little insurance settlement just be it. And I decided that, I'm only going to focus on being a good dad for my boys and trying to put my life back together again. And then anything else associated with that, from the judicial to the financial proceedings, et cetera, I was just going to let that go. Some have called me stupid for not doing that, right? There could have been a huge payout that I could have had, but I didn't want to go through yet another legal proceeding just for some money, nor did I want to have money that, came at the expense of my wife and my children. So I just wanted to let all of that go.
Yeah. Well, and I think it would be so easy to focus on the damage it would do to him, and somehow that would make you feel better, which of course it never does. It hasn't ever in history. It won't start now. It may for a second, but in the long run, it really doesn't make you feel better. It just eats most people up. But so to get all that gain at the expense of all that you just mentioned and listed, and at the expense of him, and pass that up, that's a remarkable choice. And it looks like it proved out well for you. Wouldn't you say you did the right thing at this point?
Oh, absolutely. Well, interestingly, I find it very interesting that the one thing that allowed to happen, having let it go so completely and freely and willingly, is that it did offer me an opportunity to play a part in this young man's redemption. So about a year after the crash, I was invited to go meet with him and his counselor, just the three of us, and encourage him to let it go as well and to make something of his life. And as I have watched him do that, as I watched him get released from the detention facility, as I was invited to attend his wedding reception and watch him cut the cake with his new bride, and as I have kept in touch with him and heard reports of him starting a family and having children of his own, and just really making something of his life. You can't put a price tag on that. I can go to bed at night just knowing that I had an opportunity to serve somebody that was fully, I would have been very justified in giving him all of the hate and anger and desire for punishment that I could come up with. And yet, I can say, I helped save a soul, and that's meant a lot more to me than I think anything. And it's made a bigger impact on my surviving boys than I think anything I could have said or done, because they've seen that outcome and they see that, this is a path for them too. That if they can live a life where they're, serving and trying to redeem others and trying to help the helpless or those that seemingly are unredeemable, that's a good cause, and it makes for a good life.
Yeah. Well, and I know it, just because I'm barely close enough to your situation, that I know that it wasn't obviously an easy thing for your two surviving kids, right? You had to focus there, and the focus definitely paid off. Wouldn't you feel that way?
Oh yeah, it was devastating for them, and it's taken a lot of time, a lot of years, for them to get to a healthier, place in their lives. But if it makes them, individuals that have been forged out of, horrific, terrible experiences to be these rock solid individuals that I know them to be now, then it will have been worth it.
Yeah. Let me ask you something about this. We're going to get to some business insights that have come from this in your own life, your professional career, because you've got some of those. But let me ask you this, something that was very touching to me in the movie that I didn't get in the book quite so fully because of faces. And maybe this is also a dramatic effect in the movie, because you have to fill a movie with something, and not everyone saw everything in your situation. So they did the best they could, and it was an amazing movie, and I think pretty dang accurate, it sounds like. And one of the things in the book was that you explained one of the big impacts that allowed you to have the context and the understanding and comprehend this a little more than one-sidedly from how you experienced at that time. And you were having a rough time with these kids, and you were trying to help them along and understand and everything that would happen in that situation. But then you took a moment where you had them with you, and you explained to them one of the things that had happened to you in life that helped you decide to choose redemption over vindictiveness. Were those facial expressions by the actors in that circumstance, in that event, true, or was that just something they had to tell the facts, and they chose to do it that way?
Yeah, so they chose to do it that way, but those conversations were definitely based on conversations I'd had with both of my children about what had happened to me as a young man. And what happened is, just quickly, as a 16-year-old boy, I was employed as an orderly at a hospital. I was driving to work one day, and a 3-year-old boy was chasing a 4-year-old boy just a couple of blocks from the hospital, just on their front yard. They went through a couple of parked cars right into the path of my car. And I struck the 4-year-old boy, and he succumbed to the injuries that he sustained in that, crash a couple of days later. So in that situation, I wasn't drinking, I wasn't speeding. I was, I had slowed down to try and find a place to park because I was just right at my place of employment. But it was just an exceptionally unfortunate series of events where these boys chased each other right through these parked cars, right into the path of my car on a very narrow street, just as I was, passing to park. And so it was exceptionally traumatic for me as a 16-year-old, just having barely gotten his license and just barely gotten this wonderful job that was very responsible, to be put in a situation where I suddenly thought my life was over. As I sat in the back of the police car as they, were investigating what had happened and were trying to take care of the 4-year-old boy that had been severely injured, I just thought my life was over. And so, a very, very traumatic and difficult situation to go through. And interestingly, that the family, even though they had expressed a level of forgiveness in a letter that I received, they did legally pursue my parents after that. And so, when I knew of that kind of struck me as not really forgiving. And so that's again another reason why I don't think I pursued anything to the family of the 17-year-old boy that hit me. Is I just, if I was going to truly let this go, I needed to let all of it go, and not just 90% of it. But having gone through that situation, it certainly, helped me, understand that accidents can happen, even though when you're drinking and driving, that's not an accident. This was an absolute crash that could have been avoided, but it had made me and prepared me to think about, that bad things can happen, and I could lose a wife or a child or son or daughter or something, and that I needed to be prepared for more trials.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard people that have driven drunk and talked about how they, even then, with all of the release of their decision-making capabilities, they're nervous and they drive slow and they're very careful. And that was not the case in your case. He was going freeway speeds, and it was not good. Tell us a little bit about how you met with them and what the circumstances were there and what happened and what you learned.
Yeah, so they had asked me to come out and meet with him, as I mentioned earlier, about a year after the crash, and they were working on empathy training or empathy kind of capabilities with him so that he could understand the impact of the decisions he had made that night. Having never been married or having never had children, he didn't know what it was like to lose a spouse or to lose a child. And so they had me come out and they had him prepare some questions to ask me, to tell him about my wife and to tell him about my children and how my life had changed since, their passing and how difficult it was for me to kind of move forward through all of that. all of this indicating the pain that he had brought on me and my family because of his choice that night to drink and drive. And it really wasn't until the end of that discussion together where the counselor said, is there anything else you'd like to ask Mr. Williams? And that's, he folded up his paper, and, after a moment of just internal reflection, he just looked at me and just tears started to flow. And he just said, after everything I did to your family, how could you forgive me? And that's when I just, was able to as a Christian, I just mentioned that it was everything, everything that he had seen or heard of me doing in relation to this forgiveness was, the Savior working through me. But from a practical perspective, I wanted to leave him with a challenge. And that's what I did. I just said, pick a date and let it go. Don't let this be a defining or limiting factor in your life. Certainly you're not going to forget what's happened here, but make this a foundational element of your life, not the end of your life. And so he committed to me then and there that he would pick a date and let it go. And then from that point on, he was going to rebuild his life and make something of it. So.
Yeah. Wow. That's a beautiful part of the story. I love that part of the story. I was so touched watching it depicted. And it's interesting, that young man got a challenge. And he got the very words that you heard in your mind, either through inspiration or through your thoughts about being part of humanity, or however that thought let it go came to your mind. He got let it go as well. And I just want to keep saying that because I think in a normal day, I think I've had one friend's parents never yell. I've tried to confirm that fact because it's a little hard for me to believe, and yet they say it's true. He's never yelled at his kids, and I just don't know how that's possible. But I guess he really did it. And we all have moments, not just in family life or in driving or on the freeway or anywhere. We also have them in work. And wow, what would happen if when someone really upset us or disappointed us, or there was a betrayal, if we really inside had the life experiences and the inspiration and the thoughts and the determination you had to just let it go. And I think it's interesting that it may be for copyright or marketing reasons that the book and the movie are different, but I think I've ended up really liking it, actually. You heard Let It Go. And the book is almost a challenge to the rest of us that weren't part of that accident and weren't in that cell with you, that it's a little emphasis to just let go of that thing that you're facing. And what great advice. What else would you tell us about that part of your story before I move on?
Oh, absolutely. So I think, certainly there's a challenge to let it go, but then the follow-up to that would be about the focus is to, make sure you at least have one brutal conversation with yourself, listing out those things that are absolutely within your control. If it's a corporate setting or an employee setting or some other, where you mentioned you can get kind of sideways with people or with direction of a company or your division, et cetera. I mean, you've got to kind of step back and say, what is it that's really under my control? And boy, 9 times out of 10, it's really just the things that are the simple things. It's my attitude, which is what am I thankful for? What can I focus on that it's positive in my life? What are the aspects of my life and my perspective on this that I can change and control? And I've just had a lot of success, when I kind of whittle it back to those basic things. It tends to change everything. It changes my attitude towards the offenders, my attitude towards the change that I don't like, and my hope and optimism for what can come of it. Yeah, so really, really powerful exercise.
So powerful. In a minute, we're going to get practical, and we're gonna leave this story and go back to the workplace and create a little bit of an action plan for those tough situations, borrowing from this turbocharged engine that's kind of like the much bigger version of the little things we face in life, but they feel so big in the moment. It's just such a useful lesson that you bring. I want you to just tell us in your personal life the the ending, the redemption post for what your life's become since. Tell us about Mikkel and how that happened and all that's happened since.
Sure. Yeah. So after the crash, I kind of threw myself into, once again, into the outdoor exercise that I loved in my youth, but now I combine that with some triathlons. And so I started doing triathlons, but I was just doing them by myself. I didn't have anyone to do them with. And so I had been, introduced to a potential companion in these triathlons, a lady named Mikkel Jones. And so I actually reached out and said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing a triathlon with me?" And that started a series of dating and kind of moving forward, which about a year after the crash ended up with us getting married. And so we had the opportunity. She had, her husband had passed away from bone cancer in 2006. Leaving her a widow with two children. And then I had my two boys as a widower. And so we got married, and it was an immediate Brady Bunch situation with the addition of two new children coming into our lives, one in 2009 and then one in 2012. So we've had two little girls that have been just an absolute joy. So 6 kids, the two of us, just, kind of putting together our lives when both of us had experienced tremendous loss. And it's been a journey. It's been, difficult at times, but it's been, I think now that we're 18 plus years into it, we're absolutely reaping all the dividends. It has been just an absolute joy. And to see all the kids get along, to see the extended families just, have it all wonderfully work out. And then just having these two little girls not be so young anymore. They're 16 and 13 now. So it's a wonderful time of life. So it's a lot of tremendous blessings. It's been fantastic.
Well, I know she's beautiful. I know she's kind. Wow, what a find. I didn't know she was athletic. I didn't know she was doing triathlons with you. I didn't know that part of the story. So I've got to give some free publicity to, was it during training that you met her, or did you meet her at a race the first time?
So we decided to, do some training together, and she had actually been competitively doing triathlons and was just kind of stopping to kind of get out of the competitive aspect of it. And I wasn't trying to be competitive. I was just trying to get out there and, have it for the exercise and something different to do. So
occupy your mind and your body, engage the juices. I get that. So what, did you do one together after you met? Like,
we definitely,
you kind of had to follow through with that dating line, didn't you?
Oh yeah. We did several together, and then we both
decided. What was the first one?
The first one was the Ogden triathlon that we did together.
That's awesome.
And then we did the St. George triathlon, and then went up in Jordanelle, and these are all in Utah. But actually, so mountain biking was also another love of ours together. So we decided to ditch the triathloning, and we have just wholeheartedly jumped into mountain biking. So that's our date night. The optimal date night is to go up a mountain bike and then get a burger after. It's fantastic.
Be careful. Okay, before we get to our premium, where we really get serious about some hardcore advice that's immediate and for this week, I want to go general a little bit in the last few minutes of this this part of the show. I want to just have you tell us a few, or many if you want, but besides redemption and forgiveness in the workplace, this massive, incredible, life-changing ×3 set of experiences that you've had, what are the lessons you feel like you uniquely can give? So you do some speaking, you're a leader at a big, serious company that everyone knows. What are the 3 or more big lessons that you think you uniquely bring to the people in trying to figure out their career or leading an organization?
Yeah, I think first off, it's focus. I think that's just critically important. And it's not so much just, focus for the sake of focus, or that you really want something. I think it's focus in something worthwhile. Because I think it's, when it's worthwhile, that's when you can kind of wholeheartedly get into it and have it be your real why. Whereas I think if it's like, we've talked about this earlier, if it's money, or if it's something that's just not really kind of in and of itself worthwhile, even though, money can be used to do a lot of great things with it. But if it's just that, or something else doesn't have a lot of meaning behind it, then typically it's not terribly successful. But yeah, if you can focus on something that's worthwhile, then boy, the world's your oyster. I think secondarily, I think it's about, learning. I mentioned the control. I was a big fan of the Stoics and kind of that Stoic mindset. But boy, if you have an ability to really focus on the things that you can control, you can absolutely control, then I think that helps with your ability to focus. It just kind of, it tends to kind of tune out all the static and get you focused on that clear signal of, this is what I have in my control. This is how I have to move forward. This is what I'm going to do to move my life or my career or whatever it is forward. And then I think thirdly, the thing that's I think really important to believe in is that things work out. In other words, if you've got a worthwhile goal, or you've got something that you're working towards that you wholeheartedly believe is worthwhile, especially those things that can positively impact others, that there's something in the universe that just wants you to succeed. I've been convinced of it after a lot of years in business and seeing it play out this way. Things work out if you stick with it, and it's a worthwhile goal, and you're convinced that it's the right thing, and you just keep going at it, even if it's failure after failure after failure. It works out. There's the success comes, and the payoff comes. And it might be hard, and it might test your resolve and your commitment. But if it really is a good thing to pursue and the right thing, it works out. Things work out.
Yeah. It's interesting that you connect that last one with the first one a bit. I wholeheartedly agree with that. What I've found in my practice is when people are just focused on the here and now in the short term and all the many things without true priorities, what happens is the people don't really know how to work fast and efficiently. There's a lot of asking the boss what can happen and what should happen, and not enough delegation. But the other thing that happens is even if someone delegates well and gives empowerment to all the people that he's leading or she's leading, if you don't have a destination, if you don't have something you're really trying to achieve that takes a long time in the long run, and you haven't created a big leap towards that you're working on right now in the next year or two together, what happens is it's opinion against opinion. It's smarts against smart. It's IQ against IQ. And it's a very chaotic, uncooperative scenario versus we all know the big thing we're trying to head towards that's really an accomplishment, not just a statement, not just a generality, but we're really trying to do something for those human beings we call ideal clients and their end users. And it's different than we can do now. It's bigger, it's better, it helps them more, and we're all heading there. It takes the pressure off. I'm the leader, I have to be smarter than everyone. That's where we're heading, and we just run there together in sync. Don't you think?
Oh, completely agree. Yeah. And I'm a fan of James Clear as well. There's Atomic Habits, but he just talks about systems, and there's nothing kind of new to that really. But yeah, as you apply all these things, you're thinking more of systems. They can be goal oriented, but they're more of just how do you kind of reformat and reframe your life so that this is a part of your genetics every day.
Yeah.
Your genetic makeup. Yep.
Those are great things. Okay. So we're going to switch now, and we're going to head to our premium action plan that is for premium subscribers and gift givers. And I'm excited to hear about the one thing this week that you would suggest to our listener, our premium listener, to get done in regard to all that we've talked about, this direction of being in the workplace, how you are being in the workplace. So thank you all for joining us. And if you would like to join us, please go ahead and subscribe and join Chris Williams as he gives the one thing you should get done this week so that you can be closer to the redeeming worker and leader that you should be. Before we execute our premium action plan, I just want to thank you for fueling this movement on behalf of others. If you haven't yet, give the gift of premium at boldencounters.tv. It's the fastest, easiest gift you'll ever give, and it thrills the people who get it. They too get action plans every single week with experts and their very own breakthroughs. Give the gift of premium to someone you care about. Just go to boldencounters.tv. It takes just seconds, and pass that spark on to someone else. Thank you.